Welcome back to Motivational IQ, where we open up your brain, what's going on in there, and figure out what makes us excited about things and also hate things. I'm Andy Thompson. I'm a business coach and consultant. I'm just an all-around study everything, read a lot of books, put it together, apply it, try and figure things out, experiment with a lot of things kind of guy. I love helping small businesses and people who want to make changes in their lives for the better. I have a sliding scale for helping people. So if you don't think you can afford it, reach out to me on my website, motivationaliqpodcast.com or theworkjoyproject.com. My goal in life is to help us all enjoy what we do better and get the best from it. Today, we're going to talk about books. I was going to do Apollo 13, lessons from Apollo 13. I used that movie a lot, that story, that history. But I'm going to talk about books because it's episode 11 and I want to wait for 13 to do Apollo 13. So today we're going to talk about books. And some of these books dive really deep into part of the topic or another part of the topic, kind of the whole motivational spectrum, what makes us go, how we learn, what drives us, things like that. Some of them really directly support like motivational mix and buoyancy and things like that. But others are just like the framework for how we operate. These are some of my favorite books, ones that have really dramatically impacted my life. I give away many copies of these books and recommend them probably hundreds of times. Before I keep going, I want to remind you of the quote I said last time where everybody wants transformation, but very few want the 100 hours of boring work to get to that transformation. Reading books is part of that 100 hours of boring work for some. I really enjoy it. Although some books can be boring. But before we dive into the first book, let's do a quote. Some psychologists and philosophers. I'm talking about B.F. Skinner, who taught predominantly that your behavior is shaped by what follows it and not what causes it. This is the feedback mechanism that we all use when we do something. We'll repeat it if it aligns with our long-term goals or feeds us the kind of reward that we want. So interesting. B.F. Skinner, our behavior changes. It's shaped by what follows it rather than what causes it. I'm talking about cause as a part of the holistic system. When you align your cause and the outcome, it's very fulfilling. The next one is Albert Bandura, who taught you become what you consistently watch and repeat. Now, in line with B.F. Skinner, when you watch and repeat what you're doing well and what causes it, in other words, when you prepare and act on things that drive behavior that you like and then choose to repeat it, that's the combination of B.F. Skinner and Albert Bandura. And the last one is William James, who taught that your habits are literally rewriting your brain every single day. So these three things together talk about the environment that we operate in and much less about what causes it, but that it feeds back on the cause and that we kind of shape it. And this goes really, really well with the books that I've recommended. And here's a question for you. What if the person that you call unmotivated, be it yourself or someone else, is actually responding rationally to an environment that you helped influence or create? So that's really the big question of these 5 books. So let's jump into the books. The first one is Drive by Dan Pink. I still remember the first time I watched his TED Talk about this book, where I was sitting, the emotions that came over me as I started to put some of the big pieces together. It was probably about 22 years ago, maybe, and just broke my mind open. What's funny is that I emailed my boss at the time and said, "This is great. This epitomizes me. Let's talk about it." And he never read the email. I later left that job, went on to consultant. Dan Pink says, the traditional carrot and stick rewards may work for routine tasks, but often weaken creativity and sustain performance in complex work. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose are the conditions most likely to produce durable, intrinsic motivation. Autonomy, mastery, purpose. Autonomy is choice. Mastery is action, what, and purpose is why. So how, what, and why. This is the motivational spectrum. Dan Pink went on to write several different books like Win and To Sell is Human and things like that. They're all very good. I really like his feedback. I follow him. I commonly will parrot out what he does on social media. It's very, very impactful. I like his thoughts. I've actually exchanged some emails with him in the past over like the topics that he teaches as well. Very, very good book. Drive is fairly academic, but it really dives into the surprising science behind what motivates us. All right, book two. This one is The Three Signs of a Miserable Job by Patrick Lencioni. I believe he actually renamed it later, but here's the summary of Three Signs of a Miserable Job. Through a leadership fable, Lencioni argues that jobs become miserable when workers feel anonymous, cannot see whom their work helps, and cannot judge success for themselves. Managers can reverse that misery by knowing people personally, connecting their work to real impact, and giving them useful measures they can influence. Patrick Lencioni runs something called the Table Group, which does consulting on literally how to make work more effective. And every book that he's written that I've read is fantastic. Five Dysfunctions of a Team, Three Temptations of a CEO. They're really, really good. But you'll see that the three signs of a miserable job perfectly align with how, why, and what, or mastery, purpose, and autonomy. In other words, it's a manifestation of the same thing that Dan Pink is teaching. It's a fairly short book. It's a really good read about an executive who semi-retires and gets involved in kind of a fast food business and notices that people are just miserable. And so he starts saying, hey, I know a lot about business. What can I do to help this? And he jumps in and starts going. I really like the book. Third book, Influencer by Joseph Grenny and others. Influencer was pre-social media. So this is not about social media influencers. It's literally about how change occurs. Here's the summary. Influencer treats change as a design problem rather than simply a matter of willpower, charisma, or repeated persuasion. It works backward from measurable results to a few vital behaviors, then supports those behaviors through personal, social, and structural sources of both motivation and ability. It is a mind bender. Very, very good book about how to get people to fight against their natural tendencies, think long term strategically, and use things like what B.F. Skinner and Albert Bandura talk about in feeding the mechanism and identifying, what's triggering it, what's causing it. Very, very good book. Influencer by Joseph Grenny and others. The next one is Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson and others. Actually, Joseph Grenny's part of the Crucial Conversations writing team. 2-sentence summary on that. The authors define crucial conversations as discussions involving high stakes, opposing opinions, and strong emotions, then show how to preserve dialogue when people tend towards silence or aggression. Their method begins with motive and safety, separating observable facts from interpretation, invites others' perspectives, and turns shared understanding into action. My brief summary of what crucial conversations is when you have a conversation that the why is driving high intensity, right? Money, health, relationships, promotion. That's a big why in our lives, that it's critical that you separate the how from the what. A lot of times when we're triggered for an emotional conversation, a high stakes conversation, our how overpowers what we're saying. And sometimes there's some of us who the what is too powerful for the how, and the why gets lost. Think about it. The last time somebody talked with you about something high stakes, did you shut down a little bit because they're so emotional about it, or too much detail and you lost the why? Again, if we can break the work into why is this happening? Why, what's the purpose? What do we need to do? And how do we do it? It helps us. These 4 books help us with that all together. The next one, last one, Leadership and Self-Deception. This one's written by the Arbinger Institute. 2-sentence summary. Arbinger argues that leaders become self-deceived when they justify acting against what they know they should do, allowing them to blame others while overlooking their own contribution to conflict. Sustained leadership change begins when we stop seeing people as obstacles or instruments and begin seeing them as people whose needs, pressures, and objectives matter. If you read between the lines on that, really what they're saying is when you remember why something matters, it changes how and what you do. And self-deception is when we resist what really matters or the purpose and act in a way that is estranged to that. I'll tell you to read the book. It's also a fable, very good book, spawned a couple of other ones as well. This is the single most shared book that I own. Second is Crucial Conversations because it's so effective. But the other ones in this list are also ones that I regularly recommend to people and share. You will not regret reading any of these books because what they do is they help you not only identify kind of the components in different scenarios, but they teach you more about the concept of act and react that I've talked about in the past, where everything we do is either reacting to something or preparing to react to something. When it comes to working with others, we have two jobs. One, to react in a high way, not highway, but in a high-minded method, educated, polished, respectful. But we also have a duty to create an environment where others favor responding in that same high-minded manner. That's really hard to do. But you also know that there's sometimes that we create little white light traps for people to trigger them into the wrong thing. This happens a lot with families, spouses, or tight relationships where we know their triggers and we know how to keep ourselves out of hot water by creating a different distraction. Politicians do it as well. In other words, we need to help create places where they'll respond with authenticity, psychological safety, and a full contextual understanding of what, why, and how. And that's a huge task. Very, very difficult. These books inspired me to dig deeper into how teams work. It inspired me to put together the components that I call the engaging environment. What is it we need to do in the workplace in order to get people excited? I noticed over the years that there's some things that I do with the teams that I managed that were very, very, very favorable, but also very negative. And so as I started looking at the behaviors that I was, enacting, and then looking at what caused it, what drove it, I tend to introspect a lot. What did I do that caused me to think that that was okay? What's the result? What do I really want? And what do I need to change? Reading these books opened my mind to more aspects. And I, again, highly recommend them. So to wrap it up, let me just kind of give you a sentence. Motivation it's not something we do to people. It emerges from how we are seen, how others are seen, how they're supported, how we feel supported, how they're equipped, how we feel equipped, and how they're led. Motivation is this environmental thing. And my goal is to help us understand what makes that up so that we can navigate it better, but also so that we can create better situations, environments, and scenarios for those around us to be fully engaged, motivated, and have an impact. Is there anything better than seeing someone that you've supported and helped enjoy what they're doing? Is there a better feeling for you than when you really are just in the flow and loving what you're producing? You feel good about it. You know it has an impact. That's what this is about. Thank you again. This is a short one, all about books. I've got 1,000 books that I'd recommend, but we'll start with those 5. Again, if this is helpful to you, share it, recommend it, send me a question. I would love to talk with anybody. I'll talk with anybody for, free, no problem on the first time. Visit me at motivationaliqpodcast.com or theworkjoyproject.com. But always keep working at learning so that you can stay engaged.